But today, a lot of what we're going to do today is to just explore interaction methods and how we can do things. Later, we'll think about how that helps us with analysis. But here it is more of an exploration of different techniques that you can use. And we've already done a few of it. So remember, we did animations. We realized that sometimes it's powerful, it's engaging, but also in the perception session, we learned that people are bad at simultaneously attending to multiple objects and motions. Because parsing motions into events, actions, and behaviors is just something that is cognitively demanding. And you can try this with yourself. Just, I don't know, make something that moves around and try to remember how things have moved. You can't. But we made this, right? This was a powerful system. We made this version of Hans Rosling's visualization, and we designed all of these different aspects to it. However, we're here in PowerPoint or in the slides, I'm trying to replicate how, like, the procedures of how Rosling did things. He did something beyond just making something animated. He started one by one, and then he was interacting with the data, and then he showed the stuff, and then he would give you the whole visualization. It would basically see, he would move around with the visualizations. A lot of the things that he did are interactions because this animation needed interaction. It needed selection, it needed filtering because now he's filtering some of the countries that are bigger. It needed highlighting. It needed some things to help you make sense of it. It needed pause and play. All these are interactions. So the idea of interaction in visualization is basically accumulation of a lot of things that you study in SIAT and you're studying in this class is basically interaction design, visualization design, and basically doing data analysis, helping people doing data analysis. That's where interactive visualization becomes a thing. So with these interactive visualizations, we can reveal different subsets of data. We can highlight relationships between data subsets and views. We can create multiple views and link them together. We can encourage investigation and discovery. And through this session, we're going to see a lot of examples of that. This is the stage where I want you to think about incorporating these interactions within your project, right? It's a perfect place because you're imagining what your final project is going to be. And now I want you to not only think about here's a static viz that I'll make, here's I will incorporate interaction, not only within the visualization, but maybe in the broad narrative around the visualization. So a lot of things we can do with interactions. We can select, we can highlight, we can move around, we can filter, we can brush and link. I'll show you, we can query, right? So let's look at a few of those and what it means when we say we can make a visualization selectable. The one thing you can do is you can select different data points by clicking or hovering. And then you can change visual encoding based on interaction or add new information based on this interaction. So you can take a visualization like this and have people clicking on one bar and then highlight it and show the actual value. Let me see if I have. So this is an implementation in Vega-Lite. I will share this code. Now I might do one live coding at the end with one of the interesting stuff, but you're all capable of implementing these now because I've seen your assignments. But the idea is that you can select, you can highlight something and do something with that highlight. That's an interaction. It's probably the simplest form of interaction. You can add information using a tooltip. This is still a sort of a selecting because you are not clicking, but what I'm doing here is I'm hovering on like a bar and then I'm just showing the information for that selected bar, right? Maybe this is a more easy interaction for bar charts. Maybe you don't want people to click and select something to see it. Maybe you want them to always know extra information. So you can do something with this amount of Vega-Lite code. Or in D3, similarly, it's not that difficult. So let's look at an interesting example of these being composed into a really interesting visualization. Okay, so here, these are, what is this? So first we're seeing a story, election results show a red shift across the US, right? So all the places where there's more Republican voting from Democrat, right? And then you can hover on each of these and see the specific details, okay? And then you see another version of this. You can see different years, so it's doing storytelling, and then you can see all these different states and compare them. And then hovering gets you to see how each of these countries, states within the United States, are happening. Okay, you move down. So as you can see, this specific story is incorporating several of these strategies. So it was, a lot of it is basically using hovering to highlight information about different states, right, to give you stats. And then here is using hovering to compare shifts every year from the previous year, right? So this bar tells you, okay, like Florida in 2012 was even, but in 2024, it's like plus 10 or something. So it's a pretty interesting method for visualizing. And then you can essentially read this chart, because if you don't use interaction, it's really hard to highlight all of those states. But interaction gets you to explore. Okay. Again, you could really use something of this sort. Another thing you could do, this is something I created a while ago when I was a student. You can have a network. This is a network of who has retweeted, what accounts have retweeted what account, and like some subset of Twitter. And then you can basically use hovering to highlight, for example, who Donald Trump has retweeted, or who has retweeted Donald Trump. Here I'm zooming in and out because there's more data to show in the view that we have. So you can implement this, then you can zoom in and then highlight and hover and just see, okay, the account number 04 has retweeted Donald Trump. And then you can use click to then filter the data to show all the tweets that are mentioning Trump, right? So you can then compose different things together. And then you can repeat these types of interactions. So I already show you moving around. So let's look at a D3 version of this. I'll share this slide with you to have all of these examples at your disposal. But essentially, what is happening here is that through a scroll interaction, you're updating the X and Y scales, the axes that are based on a scale. So you remember we would put the limits of these scales to set how things are shown. You just change that based on every interaction, and then you basically update your visualization. If you do it once, you see that it's pretty intuitive. And then we can do the same thing in Vega-Lite as well. So I've given you both example. If you have a lot of data that you want people to be able to zoom, then you can use this by binding a sort of interval selection and then using that to set the scale. Okay, so we've looked at this. Let me go back and then show you that you can use zoom in multiple contexts. Here's a map where you can use filtering, panning, and zooming. Here's the network visualization that we can do. And then, so interactions are everywhere when you make dashboards like this. And then you can use selecting to filter the data and then see how you might bind interactions and animations together. So when I click on number 4, instead of jumping the visualization, I create this movement so that you know from which part you've moved to which part. This type of movement is helpful so you can repeat it. See, you get a sense of moving around different parts of the map. You've seen this in Google when you search something for a distance in Google Maps, you will see how things move around. So the idea of filtering is something that's really important, probably because sometimes you will present something that has too much data. It makes it easier to understand trends of a specific subset. In this New York Times example, this is a lot of data, right? What if we had a way to just select a state? It doesn't exist, well, we could, right? So we might want to do something like that. One thing that you could do is to basically have a legend and then use that to select and filter. Let's see whether I can show you an example that I will give you. Click and select. So we've seen this. Yeah, so this is the data from the data set that you've seen, Japan sales and EU sales. I'll share this code with you, but then you can filter different genres and then see how they work. And then you could also implement on top of this filtering or a zooming and panning to help you understand. And then you could maybe also show like highlight or create sort of tooltips and stuff. So filtering happens and it gets you, it can help people focus on the things they are interested in. So another type of filter is by just limiting the axis. Sometimes you want to limit what's shown on the axis so that people can focus on a part of it. This is similar to zooming and panning. So another thing that you could do is linking multiple charts. Here we have like weather for Seattle, right? Over time. And then you want to just see for a month range, what are the different times that people have seen sun versus rain versus fog versus drizzle, right? So you can pretty much compare and update the visualization because it's pretty hard to read the whole thing. You can link these two visualizations together. This is another very powerful type of interaction that you can implement. Here's another example of just using different types of interactions and linking charts together. So here you can basically get responses, like filter the data that's shown on one visualization by selecting one other visualization. So here we are focusing on comedy movies, and then we're looking at IMDb rating versus Rotten Tomato ratings for those, and this can get updated. These examples are here for you to work on. Soon you will be prototyping some of these. Brushing and filtering you've already seen, but like this, you can basically brush a visualization, basically selecting an area and use that to filter the data that you see on other visualizations that are linked together. Linking in general is a pretty powerful tool that you can use to help people make sense of data. Because remember, I've taught you like hypervariate visualizations, you have limited tools at your disposal. You could incorporate these types of examples. Another way of using brushing is that when you have data that you want people to be able to focus on, but then also move around, you can use a concept called overview and detail. So essentially, I have this visualization below that is the same representation, but the x-axis never changes. So you will always see the overview and use that selection to zoom into the other chart, right? So it's basically these two are replicas of each other, but then you can use filtering and brushing to zoom in and select a part of another one. Again, this is another useful way of getting people to zoom to focus on part of a data set. You can use this to see, oh, what happened in 2009. This is a type of way of people asking questions. This is only some of the interactions that you can think of, right? It's like a puzzle. It's like you really want to get creative in this area, especially as designers. You can think of these interactions and the user and think of how can I help them? What type of tasks would they want to do and what types of interactions are useful? You don't always have to make charts interactive. It's not something that you will have to do, but is often necessary. Lastly, let's look at another interesting use of scrolling. You might have all seen Scrollytelling examples where as you scroll down, charts get updated. It's, in my opinion, a very powerful way of doing narrative. So as I scroll, it moves around, shows, I don't know, movement of ships around from India, Russia, and stuff. Then you can read some things and then see a visualization and then just use Scrollytelling to update the visualization and get people to see the part that they want to see or you want them to see. New York Times does a lot of good examples of these types of visualizations. What I'd like you to think about as you prepare your projects and just think about design of visualizations or any interaction in general is that we are now composing these different strategies that we learn together, right? You're still going to think about highlighting parts of the visualization and annotating and using color and encoding and different channels and think about what channels are useful. But now you're also thinking how I'm updating, how I'm using interactions to get people to ask more questions. How can I help them get to the bottom of a data set? So you're composing these different strategies. So now we're at a stage where we're able to think about using interactions on top of all the other things we've learned about visualizations. I wanted to show you an example. It's already 6. Let me think. Do you have any questions? A link to which one? Ria? The Scrollytelling one? Yep. I'll paste it right here, but also I'll share the slides that will have the links, or Mehdi will share it with you. This is the Scrollytelling one. In our GitHub, we have a template for Scrollytelling using D3. It's like more basic, but you, again, let me finish and I'll be done quickly and we'll talk about grades. So let me find. So like a visualization that I wanted to show you how to create is here. Basically, you have a bar chart of these different games and then platforms and averages of global sales. And then you're helping users calculate the average of a subset of it, right? You could basically say, okay, what happened in this area? What was the average of these or these? So it's getting some sort of calculation ready for people. Let's see if we can make it quickly before we get to the grade stuff. You know what? Let me just show you the code. I don't want to do live coding. I'm too tired. Let me just show you the code. Let me find it. You've all done this before, so it's not much. So I'll just go to GitHub and share it with you. You give me a moment. Okay. I'm just going to show you where you can find it. And then on Monday, we can go over one of them if we want. But if you feel like it's okay, because I also want everyone to be here for that. So it's under T2. So here's the link to it. But let me just quickly show you the filtering, the average one, but you can see all the examples. So I provided one example with just Vega-Lite specifications, and then another one that's using a mixture of both. But the general idea with these types of interactions under Vega-Lite is you create this brush parameter that you can tell it to brush the y-axis. And then you can use that to create basically multiple visualizations. And then at the end, you can layer them together and then pass the data for both of them. So it's a bit, when you have multiple visualizations that you want to link, you can essentially do that. You can basically get a bar visualization, you can get the line visualization, and then you can compose them together by using this layer thing. It's pretty simple, honestly. It's nothing that I want you to go through again because we've done this in class, but go through it for your project, see how that works. Okay, now